If you have been playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, you may be wondering how this story is still so meaningful nearly 30 years after we first played through it. The story, the world, and the characters all seem to resonate perfectly while we fight ever closer to a showdown with Sephiroth and the decisions of fate itself. One thing I kept coming back to as I worked endlessly to earn the romantic date option for my Gold Saucer excursion in Chapter 12 was, how has Tifa Lockhart stayed such a compelling character in Final Fantasy VII? And now we have a completely academic reason to explore archetypes again on YouTube, yeah! And this time we're going to break down the character of everyone's favorite martial arts swimsuit wearing master. You guessed it, Tifa Lockhart. First, let's quickly break down what Jungian archetypes are. Carl Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist, introduced the concept of archetypes to describe universal, recurring symbols or themes that emerge in myths, literature, and of course, now, video games. There are several archetypes like the hero, the outlaw, the jester, and today's focus, the caregiver. There are 12 in total. Although all of them can be applied to our favorite video games, and noticing these psychological values gives us insight into the fundamental aspects of human nature and behavior to connect with the characters in our games on a deeper level. Here's the part where my community might be tempted to post something like, "Doc, you didn't have to get all fancy just to tell us you think Tifa is hot." And while you would be right at guessing that Tifa is probably one of my first video game crushes, is probably the same for many gamers from my generation, it isn't only Tifa's looks that has made her a queen in the pantheon of timeless video game characters. At least that's what we're telling ourselves so that we can make this video. The surprise I felt when I found this personality for Tifa after watching her tear through wave upon wave of Shinra enemies was shocking when I first considered it. But then I decided to think about it with the story in the front of my mind. To understand this completely, we have to separate Tifa's utility in battle from her connections to the other characters, and then we are able to discover her actual role in the story. After all, if we look at the abilities that seem to connect strongest with caring for teammates, healing, and other forms of magic, these are all probably more identifiable with Aerith, unless we dig deeper and actually think about it. If we're distracted by the damage and the stagger potential, Tifa is arguably the most useful character in the party. But how does the caregiving archetype deal so much damage on the battlefield, and then leave us wondering that this character is actually the caregiver in her archetype role? Well, let's get into that. The caregiver archetype in the Jungian tradition is defined by an altruistic nature and desire to protect or provide for others. Characters with this attunement are defined by qualities like compassion, loyalty, and most of all, empathy. This personality type is motivated to help others by providing support, reassurance, and advice, and they often put the needs of others before their own. They are also humble, reliable, and proactive, and they might be overprotective and neglect themselves in the process. When we talk about Tifa, the first thing that comes to mind is her... Wait, no, don't get distracted, stay with me here. Is her unwavering support for her friends. This attention to others isn't just a part of her personality, it's central to her role in the story. Tifa perfectly represents the caregiver archetype by making sure her Avalanche teammates, and especially Cloud, make it through their toughest challenges. But what makes her such a quintessential example of the caregiver? Throughout Final Fantasy VII, Tifa repeatedly puts her friends and allies above herself. Even though the remake story is not fully told yet, we're at part 2 out of 3 at the time of this video, we've seen many examples of her basic characteristics come through as a life-saving grace for the other party members. Remember that time when she pleads with Cloud to not give in to the mind control of Sephiroth? No, the other time. Well, you get my point. Or what about the time when she risked her life to save Barrett and the others from Shinra? These actions are classic examples of the caregiver archetype. She prioritizes the well-being of her loved ones, often at her own expense. Tifa embodies this role fully, with her connection to Cloud being one of her most intriguing qualities as the story unfolds. Outside of battle, we also see her willingness to serve others in her role as a bartender for Seventh Heaven and whenever she looks after Marlene. In almost every scene she is in, she's either providing support, backing up someone, or preventing a form of danger to her friends. Tifa's relationship with Cloud is particularly telling. Even when Cloud is at his lowest, when he's confused and doesn't quite deserve the unwavering support, Tifa is still there. She helps him regain his sense of self and purpose all the time. This unconditional support is a hallmark of the caregiver, and that role Tifa again fulfills beautifully. Evidence of Tifa's caregiving nature is most poignant whenever she discovers a contradiction in Cloud's fractured memories. Despite knowing the entire time that his past isn't as he remembers, she still listens and lets him tell his version of the story. And afterwards, even if she's upset, she still stays by his side and guides him towards the truth without shattering his reality. This is likely because she recognizes that he will eventually confront his connection with Zack when he is ready, and that rushing him through the prolonged dissociated grief could ruin Cloud down to his core, causing a crisis within himself. See what I did there? Tifa is not willing to risk losing another person she loves. She's already lost her father, her home, and nearly everything thanks to the betrayal from Sephiroth when he turned on Shinra earlier in her life. She's the emotional glue that holds the team together, providing the moral and emotional support everyone needs. But don't let her compassionate side fool you. Tifa shows her motivations consistently throughout the Final Fantasy VII saga, but her abilities during battle also connect with her archetype in interesting ways. Tifa's ferocity in battle makes her a force to be reckoned with. Her fists aren't just for show, they deliver a devastating message to anyone who stands against her commitment to her loved ones and her cause. Every archetype can be heroic, including the caregiver. One of the most enticing things about Tifa's depiction of this role is that she is rarely on the sideline once you meet her in the campaign. I mean, unless you want to put in Red 13 or Yuffie or anyone else. But why would you? Tifa's the best at combat. Anyway. Also, no person is 100% just one archetype, meaning Tifa doesn't have to carry the qualities of just this one archetype. She can carry the qualities of the warrior or the hero, while she seeks to gain training and master her martial arts abilities. She also can have the qualities of the lover for any player that pushed through Final Fantasy VII Rebirth to make sure Cloud takes her on the gold saucer date. One of my greatest accomplishments. But that is based 100% on player preference, and many question whether this works as a canon choice anyways. I think it does, but maybe that's a different video. The duality she manages across these hybrid archetype pairings repeatedly serve her well. Whether she's fighting through the streets of Midgar or the depths of the Don Corneo dungeon, Tifa's caregiver goals and her prowess as a main damage dealer coalesce magnificently. Does Tifa's characterization resonate with your inner caregiver, or does it inspire you to look beyond the surface of your favorite game characters? After all, that's why we have these conversations. Understanding Tifa through the lens of the Jungian archetype enriches our grasp of Final Fantasy VII. Tifa is such a formidable character to take into battle that the idea of the caregiver felt like a stretch at first, but after putting this video together, I hope I've convinced everyone that this archetype really fits her character, especially what we see of her so far. As a side note, this is an even more important lesson for Tifa since historically, it's not her fist people get distracted by. There's actually an amazing character that's being created by Square Enix and showed to us with each new phase of their storytelling. Tifa Lockhart's embodiment of the caregiver archetype adds a rich, emotional layer to Final Fantasy VII, making her a character that's not only memorable, but deeply impactful. If you enjoyed this in-depth look at Tifa and want more character analysis, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications. Thanks for watching, and until next time, happy gaming and continue the journey.